She was meant to die in the snow, her body already surrendering to the cold as the storm erased every trace of her existence. The wind howled across the frozen wilderness, burying her footprints, swallowing her cries, sealing her fate with each falling flake. Her hands were numb, her breath shallow, her strength almost gone. Somewhere deep inside, she knew the truth the world had already accepted, that she would not survive the night. Winter had claimed her, and no one was coming. No one, except fate, had one final turn left. If you believe that kindness still matters, that second chances can rise from the coldest moments, take a moment now to like, comment, share, and subscribe to the channel, Wild West Tale. These stories live because people like you believe humanity is never truly lost. She had not always been alone. Once, she belonged somewhere. Once, there were voices around her, warmth in shared meals, and hope carried quietly in her heart. But life has a way of tightening its grip slowly, without warning. Hard seasons came one after another, and with each passing month, she became less visible to those around her. When resources ran thin and fear took hold, compassion became a luxury. She was seen not as a person, but as a burden. When winter arrived early and brutal, the decision was made without words. She was sent away under the lie of help and safety, guided deeper into the wilderness until the truth revealed itself in silence. When she realized she had been abandoned, the cold was already winning. The snow was deep, swallowing her legs with every step. Hunger had weakened her long before the storm did, turning her movements slow and clumsy. She fell more than once, each time struggling to rise, each effort costing more than the last. Her coat was thin, torn at the edges, offering little protection against the merciless wind. The forest loomed around her, tall and indifferent, its branches heavy with snow like watchful witnesses to her final hours. As daylight faded, fear gave way to exhaustion, and exhaustion softened into something far more dangerous, acceptance. She collapsed near a fallen tree, her body curling inward as if trying to protect what little warmth remained. Her thoughts drifted between memories and dreams, faces blurring together, voices fading into the sound of wind. The pain began to disappear, replaced by a strange calm. This, she thought dimly, must be how it ends. Not with screams or struggle, but with quiet surrender. Miles away, another life moved through that same frozen world, burdened by a different kind of weight. The stranger who would find her lived far from towns and roads, in a small cabin carved out of the wilderness. He was a man shaped by loss, carrying years of grief in his shoulders and silence in his eyes. The forest had become both his refuge and his prison. Work kept him alive, cutting timber, repairing tools, surviving one day at a time, but it did nothing to ease the emptiness that followed him like a shadow. That morning, he had hesitated before leaving his cabin. The storm had worsened overnight, and even he knew the danger of venturing out. But isolation had taught him something powerful. When the world grows quiet in a certain way, something is wrong. The air felt heavy, unsettled. He packed his gear and stepped into the snow, unaware that his path was about to cross a life hanging by a thread. As he moved through the forest, the wind stung his face, and snow clung to his beard and coat. Then he saw it, a shape that did not belong. At first, he thought it was debris, maybe an animal caught in the storm. But something about it pulled him closer. His heart tightened as the truth became clear. A woman lay half buried in snow, her body frighteningly still, her skin pale against the white ground. For a moment, he stood frozen, not from cold, but from fear. Helping her meant risking his own life. Carrying her back would be slow, dangerous, maybe impossible. The storm showed no mercy, and winter did not forgive mistakes. Walking away would be easier. Walking away would keep him safe. But he did not walk away. He knelt beside her, brushing snow from her face, feeling the faintest trace of breath. That fragile sign was enough. Without hesitation, he wrapped her in his heavy coat and lifted her into his arms. She felt impossibly light, like someone already slipping away. Every step back toward his cabin was a battle against the wind, against exhaustion, against doubt. His legs burned, his lungs ached, and more than once he nearly fell. But he kept going, driven by something deeper than logic, a refusal to let another life disappear into the cold. When he finally reached the cabin, his strength was nearly gone. Inside, he laid her near the fire, feeding it until the room filled with warmth. He worked with steady urgency, thawing frozen hands, melting snow for water, doing everything he could remember to keep life tethered to her body. Hours passed in silence, broken only by the crackle of firewood and the storm raging outside. Slowly, almost imperceptibly, she began to return. Her recovery was fragile and uncertain. Days blended together as her body fought to heal, her mind drifting in and out of awareness. The stranger stayed close, sleeping lightly, waking often to check her breathing. He rationed his food without complaint, giving her the larger share. He asked nothing, expected nothing. Saving her was not a debt to be repaid, it was simply the right thing to do. As strength returned to her limbs, memories returned too. The betrayal cut deeper than the cold ever had. She remembered the faces that turned away, the moment she realized she was no longer wanted. Shame followed grief, a heavy weight that made her feel small and undeserving of survival. Some nights, tears slipped quietly down her cheeks, grief surfacing when the world finally felt safe enough to feel again. The man who saved her carried his own silent wounds. Watching her heal reopened something inside him that had been locked away for years. He remembered what it meant to care, to hope, to feel responsible for another human being. The cabin, once a place of isolation, slowly transformed into something warmer, filled not just with firelight but with purpose. Weeks passed. The storm faded. The sky softened. Snow still covered the land, but the world felt less hostile. She began to walk again, first unsteadily, then with growing confidence. She helped where she could, sweeping floors, preparing food, doing small things that made her feel useful again. Each task rebuilt a piece of herself that had been stripped away. Spring arrived quietly, as it always does. Snow melted into streams, and the forest breathed again. With the thaw came choice, something she had been denied before. She could leave. The world beyond the trees still existed, and perhaps somewhere within it, she could rebuild her life. But leaving was no longer simple. The cabin had become more than shelter. It was where she had been seen when she was invisible, valued when she was disposable. The stranger had given her something rare, not just survival, but dignity. He never asked her to stay. He never asked for gratitude. He understood that true kindness does not demand return. Standing at the edge of the forest, ready to decide her future, she realized something profound. Surviving winter had not just saved her life, it had changed it. She was no longer the woman left to die in the snow. She was someone who had been given a second chance, and she intended to honor it. She stayed, not out of fear, but out of hope. Together, they rebuilt quiet lives shaped by resilience and trust. Pain did not vanish, but it softened, transformed by purpose and shared days. The wilderness that had nearly claimed her became the place where she truly began again. If this story touched your heart, if it reminded you that even one act of kindness can change everything, please like, share, and subscribe to Wild West Tale. Your support keeps these stories alive and reaching those who need them most. And just before this story ends, leave a comment below. Tell us where you're watching from, or share one word that describes how this journey made you feel. She was meant to die in the snow. The world had already decided that. But one kind heart refused to accept that ending, proving that even in the coldest moments, humanity can still rise, and sometimes, that is enough to save a life, and two souls, forever.